with our training course or pathways to teach literature. So today you are getting an amazing journey with two important and very interesting lecture with our pioneers, Dr. Ofa Hussein and Dr. Arwa Hussein. With Dr. Ofa, you are going to listen to the application of how to teach literature according to her way of teaching in Dr. Faust's drama, and Dr. Arwa Thankful is going to interest us with her way in teaching poetry. So at first we will listen to Dr. Aufa and then to Dr. Arwa. So now you can start, our dear Dr. Aufa. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Dr. Istebrak. Now my presentation is entitled The Art of Teaching, the Tragical History of the Life and Death of Dr. Faustus. This is me, Assistant Professor Dr. Ofa Hussein Duri, Tكريت University, College of Education, English Department. Now, yesterday, Dr. Istebrak gave us the theoretical path towards the way we can read literature, the way we can study literature, and she used a very nice sentence. I like it very much. The art of teaching. In fact, teaching is really an art. This is your ability, this is your talent, and in addition, it is your knowledge, how to teach, how to be innovative, how to be creative, so as to achieve certain goals. Now, yesterday, Dr. Istebrak highlighted two important kinds of knowledge, the content knowledge and the pedagogical knowledge. If I want to simplify things and make them more clearer, I'm going to say that when we say content knowledge, it is mainly concerned with what I am going to teach, what are the materials that I want to teach, what is the subject matter that I want to teach, what is the play I want to teach, what is the literary text I want to teach, and what are the other things I want the students to be familiar with. In addition, if I want to teach them certain things, so of course I have to have certain goals, certain targets, and I have to know what is the reason behind choosing these particular materials. When we go to pedagogical knowledge, it is almost about how. How can I achieve? How can I teach? How can I explain? How can I make the students absorb all these things, all the knowledge, all the information? In addition, how can I make them improve their linguistic skills? After all, you know that what is the aim of teaching English literature in English department? It is, of course, to improve their linguistic skills. In addition, we have to do another thing, that is to improve their critical thinking, to improve their knowledge. We try as much as possible to make them encyclopedic in the knowledge they have. So if we want to concentrate upon the knowledge that we are going to discuss, we are going to concentrate upon content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. That is what to teach and how to teach. Okay, I myself, as Dr. Ofa, I want to teach Dr. Faustus. Now, what do I want to teach concerning Dr. Faustus? I'm going first to concentrate upon the content knowledge. I want to teach them drama. I want to make them familiar with the way Renaissance drama is to a certain extent a kind of deviation from the Aristotelian tragedy. I want to teach them morality play, and whether the chosen text or the decided text is a kind of a morality play. I want to adopt certain theory in order to apply what I am going to discuss in the text. I have to relate things to this theory. So I am going to concentrate in teaching this particular play upon certain aspects, morality play, the chain of being, and I am going, of course, to concentrate upon the dramatic form. And you know, my dear, that when we talk about chain of being and link it with the dramatic form, here we are talking about the collaboration, the interrelatedness between the content and the form. In addition, I want them to be familiar with the sources of this particular play, whether this play is influenced in a way or another by a previous text. So this is the content knowledge. This is what do I want to teach. Now, so what are the objectives of the decided content knowledge? I have to ask myself, so if I want to teach them all these things, what is the benefit? What are my objectives? Now I am going to concentrate upon, I want to improve, in fact. I want to improve their linguistic skills. I want to improve their informational background. I want to make them such an encyclopedic student. They have to be familiar with different things. In addition, I want to improve their critical thinking. I want to make them know how to think, how to link things with each other's. Simply speaking, I want to make them link the dots. I want to make them know how to link Dr. Faustus maybe with another literary work, modern, postmodern, contemporary, or maybe a text that belongs to the medieval age. So I have to make my students know how to link the dot by means of improve their critical thinking, by means of improve their informational background, and of course all these things are going to be imprisoned inside them without linguistic skills. Of course, what is language? Language is a means of communication. So if they want to express themselves, they have to do what? They have to know how to read, how to write, how to listen, how to understand, how to comprehend, how to absorb. Okay. If I want to go to how, of course, if I want to think about the way I can achieve all these goals, I have to divide the process of teaching into 3 stages. Before reading the text, then reading the text, then after reading the text or post-reading. So in each stage, I have to be sure that I have achieved the goals, the targets, the objectives I am looking forward. So the first, imagine that this is my first class, so, or maybe this is my first session. The first word that I am going to say about a drama. I'm going to ask my students, what is a drama? Of course, I know that, I suppose that they are familiar with the term drama from the first year. So they are going to start the process of memorization. They are going to go back to the previous stage, and they are going to get the information that they know about drama. Maybe they are going, drama is written to be acted. Others are going to say drama is is represented by Aristotle, and we have the form of Aristotle. Others are going to say different things, and all these things, by the way, are to a certain extent, sometimes they are scientific informations, and some other times they are not. It is just like when I ask my student, what is literature? Of course, they are going to be such a general information. So it is our duty in the first year, as a case in point, to teach our students what is literature, and in an academic way. They have to know what is literature and define literature in such an academic way. Another important thing I'm going to ask them about, do you think that life is a kind of drama? Here, I am trying to motivate them to tell me if we can compare and contrast drama with life. Is there a kind of similarity, or is there a kind of differences, a difference between drama and life? And maybe here I can share them my background or my information about the famous speech said by Shakespeare. Life is just like a play. It has two doors, one to enter from and the other to get out from. Then, if I am going to talk about life, of course, I have to do another important thing. Who is the designer of this life? Of course, I expect that all of them are going to tell me, now God, of course, God is the designer of this life. Then I am going to ask my students, what is the reason behind choosing this particular word? Why do you think I am saying designer? Why don't you think that it is better to say who is the creator of life? Now, I am going, of course, to get different answers, I guess. So maybe each student has to, or he can, write down the answer on the blackboard or in front of him, and I'm going to ask them to write down this particular word. Why designer? Why not a creator? Because I want to link this particular word with another important aspect related to the age of Dr. Faustus in particular. During that time, during Renaissance, God is the designer of the word, and during that time and in other times they believe that the whole world is just like a clock, and this clock is designed by God. When I'm going to link this with God, I am going to seep into what? I am going to seep into the religious discourse of this particular play. Here I am doing what? I'm trying to improve their knowledge, and I'm trying to show them the way how to use the academic words suitable for talking about Dr. Faustus. When we talk about any literary text, when we talk about any novel, when we talk about any poem, and when we especially are asked to write a critical essay about this a specific topic, we have to keep in mind that this is such an academic topic. So I have to know the concepts and the vocabularies of this particular topic. It is not a matter of writing a composition, so I can, or let me say, it is not a reflective essay. It is an academic essay, a scientific essay. So when I write, or when I am asked to write an academic or a critical essay, I have to keep in mind that I have to use the words, the suitable vocabularies related to the specific branch of knowledge that I'm trying to tackle, and at the same time I have to keep in mind that I'm trying to enlarge their information. And at the same time, I am trying, if I am going to let them speak about things they are thinking about, or if I am going to ask them to write down certain things, or if I'm going to ask them to write what they are thinking about on the board, of course here I am trying to motivate their linguistic skills. When I'm going to ask them about the structure of this design, I am going to take them to another important area. What is this important area? I am taking them to a very important concept related to Dr. Faustus in particular, that is the great chain of being. God designed this word according to certain structure, and we call this structure the great chain of being. At the top, it is just like a pyramid. At the top, we have God, then we have angels, then we have man, then we have animals, then we have planets. So this is the way the structure of this life, the structure of the whole world is organized. Now, I can ask them, write down, or you can draw this pyramid, and you can link with this pyramid another similar structure. So here I'm trying as much as possible to do what? I'm trying to motivate their imagination, to motivate the way they can absorb the meaning I want them to get. Another important thing that I am going to ask them about, are we good or bad by nature or nurture? Do we acquire our knowledge? Do we acquire our desires, our feelings, or our experiences, let us say, by nature? Is it something we inherit, or because of certain experiences we are doing what we are getting, because of we inherit certain things, we are behaving in this way? So here I am trying to reflect on one of the another important discourse maybe during that time, when man has certain ambition and he wants to transcend the limitation. He is going to be maybe another person. So this is an important question concerning the personality, the character of Dr. Faustus. So if you look at all these questions, you can see that I am preparing them to the text, and I am motivating them. I am trying to do what? I'm trying to encourage them to speak. I'm trying to encourage them to participate. I'm trying to motivate their linguistic skills. I'm trying to build upon their cumulative knowledge. I'm trying to motivate their critical thinking. So I across all these things at the same time by means of the type of questions I can ask them. What are your most fearful sins? If you have the chance to chat with your sins, what would you say? So all these things are what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to prepare my student to the atmosphere, the whole environment of the they are going to deal with. Now let's move to another important things I usually concentrate upon when I deal with the literary text: macro and micro elements of the text. If you have a look at this picture is what? It is whole structure. It is a picture from what? From nature. Here, another picture. This picture in particular highlights what? Highlights, or you can imagine that this picture stands for what? It stands for a text. Why? Because what appears on the surface, we call it the macro elements of the text. What is hidden beneath, these are the micro elements of the text. Now, if I want to decide what are the macro elements of the text, they are going to be the author, who is the author, what is the plot, what is the theme, characters, and I am going, of course, to talk about a kind of character that is the Faustian bargain, the setting, diction, genre, blank verse, all these things. So, what about the micro elements? What about the micro element? Now, the micro element, this is the sociocultural discourse, the religious discourse, the ethical discourse in the text, in Dr. Faustus. So, I have to let them know that if you are going to deal with another text, you have to keep in mind that we have macro elements and we have micro elements. If we are going to talk about sociocultural discourse, of course, we cannot ignore the plot, the theme, the character, the setting, the diction, genre, blank verse, etc. All these things are going to be interrelated to constitute what? To constitute a whole structure. That's why I said from the very beginning that teaching is an art. You have to know how to manage. You have to know your limitation. You have to have a look at the time. Do I have enough time? Do I have enough time to achieve all these goals? Or maybe I am going to exceed the decided time. So when I'm going to focus upon certain area, I am going to limit myself. I am going to find a scope for my study limitation. I have to limit myself. And by the way, I can ask my students, why in your opinion I have to limit myself? Why in your opinion any teacher has to limit himself? The answer for this question, I can once again make them improve their informational knowledge by referring to Aristotle. And by the way, our students in the second year have to be familiar with Aristotle. Why? Because in an introduction to literature in the first year, we are teaching them Aristotle, the Aristotelian design or the Aristotelian form of tragedy. So I am going to remind them once again of Aristotle, and I'm going to tell them, look, Aristotle compares this to a garden. If you are going to find yourself in a garden, you have to absorb the whole scene. You cannot absorb the whole scene if your sight is going to be scattered here and there. So we have to have certain magnitude. I'm going to tell them, do you know what is the word magnitude? What is the word magnitude? So look at the way I'm trying to use particular vocabulary so as to improve their language, to improve not only their linguistic skills, but also their academic skills. Okay. Another important thing, reading the text. Now, reading the text, of course, I have to let them be the leaders. Now, I have to a certain extent detach myself. So, I am going to give them the rule to be the characters. And each one of them is going to take certain rule. And each one of the students is going to read the speeches of certain character. One of them is going to be the chorus. We are going to concentrate upon the time and the place, and we are going to deal with Dr. Faustus as a tragic hero. Now, what is the significance of this? I have to ask them. Now, what is the significance of each character? Imagine that this drama or this play is empty of this character. There is no this particular character. There is no Faustus. There is no Mephistopheles. There is no the good angel or the bad angel. What is going to happen? And I am going to use the comparative approach. How? All the time, I am going to ask them, keep in mind that when you are going to read Dr. Faustus, all the time that you have to discover by yourselves the similarities, the difference between Dr. Faustus or the play of Marlowe from what? From the Aristotelian tragedy. So I am showing them the way towards the comparative approach, how to compare and contrast. How does Marlowe deviate from Aristotle? Does he try to add, or he imitates, or he is doing what? Another important thing, which is of course related to the form, of the text. What is the significance of certain words? What is the significance of a grammatical structure? What is the significance of the poetics, the blank verse? The language of the chorus. What do you think about the language of the chorus? Is it just like the language of Dr. Faustus himself? So what is, if there is any difference, so what is this difference? Why do you think that there is such a difference? And of course, as I've told you, that we are following the comparative approach, so all the time we are trying to focus upon the Aristotelian design versus the Marlonian design. A very important thing, that is the sympathy versus empathy. Now, some people believe that Dr. Faustus is a tragic hero. Others say no, he is not a tragic hero. And if we go to the definition of Aristotle, we have the cathartic effect, and the cathartic effect is motivated by certain feelings, pity and fear in particular. So I'm going to concentrate upon these two words, sympathy versus empathy. Maybe I can ask them to write down what is the difference between sympathy and empathy. You have to know, and by the way, this is not just two vocabularies. No, they have a theoretical dimension. I have to know their theoretical dimension. When we deal with any literary work, it is not a matter of emotional response. I hate it, I like it. No. When we deal with any literary text, we have to know what is, why do I sympathize such character? Why I empathize such character? Why do I have, why I'm trying to say this? We have to know. So we have to make the student know what is sympathy, what is empathy, what is the emotional response, etc. And I'm going to, of course, add to their critical information, a critical informational knowledge by highlighting the term archetypal character. Archetypal character. And I am going to highlight the idea. Now, the archetype is a literary term and it is a theory at the same time. So here I am trying to do what? I'm trying to let them familiar with particular words. Archetype. What is this word? You have to know it. You try to write it. Archetype. And imagine that other archetypal characters that you have read, or maybe archetypal characters that you confront in your daily life. Now, let's take an example. This is a quotation, or this is a speech, a dialogue between Mephistopheles and between Dr. Faustus. In this speech, I'm trying to concentrate upon certain words. I am going first of all to ask them, with reference to this, what is the function of literature? Now, the function of literature, we have many things. You know, you are familiar with many definitions related to literature, and you know that maybe you know or you don't know that all these definitions, maybe they are not such academic definitions. So I am going to teach them very important thing, that the function of literature is to teach and to preach. Dr. Faustus is going to teach you certain information and it is going to preach you at the same time. What is this moral lesson that you are going to get? Try to give me certain moral lessons behind Dr. Faustus in particular. Here, I am going also to concentrate upon these particular words: frivolous, great, passionate, and I am going to ask my students, what if we are going to substitute all these words with another words? What is the function of these words? And what is the meaning of these words? So here, in this case, I am not concentrating upon the meaning of vocabulary only. I am trying to link this meaning, this form, with certain content. All the time we have to link, or we have to make such a collaborative relationship between the content and the form. Now, the post-reading. In post-reading, we have finished reading this Dr. Faustus. So we have to evaluate. Now, I'm going to ask my student to write a reflective essay, and I'm going to tell them, what is the reflective essay? This is the way you respond to Dr. Faustus. What do you think about Dr. Faustus? And when you tell me certain things, don't tell me these things according to the two answers. I like it, I hate it. No, you have to be objective. And I'm going to ask them to write a critical essay, and they have to decide certain topic. And this is the most important, or I like it very much, the card question. I'm going to give my students certain cards, and at the back of the card there is, in fact, the card has two faces. So at the first face, they are going to read certain sentence, and at the back there is another sentence. So I am going to ask them to read the card, the first face, then they can guess what they are going to find in the back of the card, at the back of the card. For example, imagine that this is a quotation from Dr. Faustus, which is written at the faces of one of the cards. The reward of sin is death. Now, you can ask the students, what do you think? What is this quotation? What is the suitable thing you are going to tell me about this card? He can write everything. He can, and I am going to tell him that there's a kind of multiple truth or relative truth. Feel free to write what you think. Then I am going to show him the way the author believes. What does the author say, or how does the author complete this particular sentence? For example, the reward of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life. Another thing, I do repent, yet I do despair. At the back of the card, we have the completion of this particular sentence. Contradiction as despair is the belief that one has no savior, and to many this is one of the most unforgivable sin. All these are means to evaluate their competence: linguistic, informational, critical thinking, etc. Of course, I am going to make a test, another kind of test, which is going to be multiple choice. And when I deal with multiple choice, I not try to choose certain choices, correct or false. No, I am going to give them one choice that is correct, another one that is definitely correct, a third one that is correct. Sorry, one is wrong, the other is definitely wrong. The third one is going to be correct, but the fourth one is going to be more correct. So here he has to think carefully. Also, answer with one question. I am going to ask them, justify the following sentences, and your answer should be one sentence only. So here I'm trying to teach them how to be precise and concise. Another kind of assessment can be decide a keyword. I can give them certain sentences, certain quotations, and I'm going to ask them to give me at least 3 keywords for this quotation. So they have to think. They have to know the meaning of the words. They have to know what is the significance of these keywords if he is going to choose them. So you can say that this is the strategy I follow when I teach Dr. Faustus. Thank you very much. This is the end of my lecture. Thank you very much. أستاذ عباس، ده تسمعني؟
نعم دكتورة أسمعك، بارك الله بك.
تمام، راح أسوي شير هسه المحاضرة الدكتورة اروى.
مني متهم ثاني.
ثواني.
دكتورة اروى افتح المايك من حضرتك.
نعم أستاذ عباس وياكم.
أهلا دكتورة.
اوكي دكتور.
ثواني بالله بس اسوي الشير. واضحة عندكم؟
واضحة دكتورة.
تمام.
Okay, can I start now?
Yeah, please start.
Okay, good evening everyone, and thank you for Dr. Estebreq's presentation. This is Assistant Professor Dr. Arwa Hussein Muhammad, and I'm going to present new pathways for teaching poetry to ESL students at Iraqi universities. Actually, I would like to begin my presentation like Dr. Oofى. I would like to begin by referring to something mentioned by Dr. Istebreq yesterday, that teaching is an art. Actually, it's honestly an art, because finding the appropriate method for teaching literature is not only something we find in books specialized, majored in teaching, methods of teaching, but it is also based on, of course, its knowledge of these books, but it is also results from our long experiences, and also it's a talent likewise. And I would like to refer to something I found in a method of teaching, which is I'm going to present today, called constructivism. And I found this coincidentally, this method once while I was Googling, and I found it very interesting. And I read so much about it, and I tried to apply this method for teaching poetry by trying to fit or contextualize it in a way that fits the Iraqi context and makes it more appropriate to our Iraqi students. So let me start by explaining why teaching poetry. What is the significance of poetry? Actually, poetry is something that motivates language development. And I found that teaching poetry is a challenge. Why is it a challenge? Because we need to teach poetry in a way that attracts the students' attention, because mostly students, because of the difficulty they find in poetry, they might lose interest in it, and they may find it boring. So it is the teacher's responsibility to draw their attention and to give them, teach them and give them joy at the same time. So Recent studies of pedagogy argue that constructivism is effective in retaining poetry teaching and learning outcome among students. Now, to sum up the idea of constructivism is a method of teaching that challenges or deviates from the traditional techniques of teaching literature, which is based on the idea of teacher-centered. Now, according to this new method, the center of teaching is not the teacher. It's a process of collaboration between the teacher and the students. Constructivism teaching approach to teaching and learning is based on the premise that cognition, learning, is the result of students' mental construction. In other words, students learn by fitting new information together with what they already know, which is learned of or previous experience. Now, how do we apply these things? You know, literature is about human experiences. Now, we try to, by applying this method of teaching, we try to explain the literary text in a way that fits, that comes closer to previous experiences, previous life experiences they already know. Constructivism hypothesizes that idea, intuition, and cognition are constructed or developed through the interaction of innate drive and experience. Active participation is highly emphasized in constructivism. In other words, successful teaching of poetry depends on the idea that learning is not attained but created. Yani, it avoids or deviates from the idea that teaching poetry is no more spoon feeding. It's not like we impose the idea or the information on the student's mind, but we give them the chance to create this knowledge by themselves. Please, next up. These are some useful tips on constructivism, how to apply constructivism in teaching poetry. Teachers quote from How We Think by John Dewey. This is one of the scholars who applied this method. To grasp the meaning of a thing, an event, or a situation is to see it in its relations to other things, to see how it operates or functions, what consequences follow from it, what causes it, what uses it can be put to. So it's a matter of thinking and rethinking, grasping and re-grasping. And constructivism would challenge the teacher to assure that students draw from their experience and relate it to the poem. What does this mean? Here I'm going to refer to something very important. As you know, in our English departments, we teach poetry since the second stage, second year, second, third, and fourth year. We follow a chronological way in teaching poetry. In the second year, we teach 2 epochs. Then in the third year, we teach 2 epochs. Then in the fourth year. So, according to the ministry curriculum or plan of syllabus, we are not limited to specific poems, but we are limited to specific epochs and poets, not poems. And here, we teachers of poetry are given more liberty or freedom than other teachers or teachers of other genres of literature. How? Because we are not limited to specific poems. And here comes the teacher's experience and intelligence on how to select the poems. يعني poetry selection is very important. Teachers of poetry should select the poems that come closer to the life experiences of our students. This makes them interact better and live the context of the environment of the poem itself and feel like it's their experience. It means that they feel more that the experience they read in the poem is their own experience. Please, next slide, please, Doctor. Constructivism and poem selection. Teachers need to be selective of poems they teach. A smart teacher could select the poems that most relate to the students' life experiences. What does this mean? Yani, what kind of poems do we need to select? For example, we need to select poems that talk about religion or man's experience or connection or relationship with God, with the universe, poems that talk about nature or maybe the passing of time, the shortness of life and friendship, betrayal, fidelity, infidelity, and so on. The teacher should allow time for multiple oral reading of the poem, then give a general idea of it. Now, so the first thing we start by when we teach a new poem, we should give the students the chance to give multiple readings. Yani we select some students to read the poem, to give oral reading, and then I can give a general idea of the poem. Then, by giving them a general idea, I prefer to do this even before we go to the life or to the biography of the author. Why? Because even when we go, of course we shouldn't skip the life sketch of the poet. It is important. But I usually tell my students that not everything related to the life sketch of the poet is necessarily significant. Try to be selective even when you read, even when you produce some informational background about the life sketch. How? What does this mean by being selective? Try to be selective means only refer to the information that can best give or a better understanding of or relatedness, shows relatedness to the poem itself. For example, let me have one example, a poem entitled The Pulley by George Herbert. George Herbert is a metaphysical poet who lived, and metaphysical poetry is a very well-known school of late 16th and early 17th century poetry. And we know that this school is well known by the use of the metaphysical conceit, which is an advanced type of metaphor. The students should have prior notice on this school, on its characteristics. Then I make them themselves think how to apply. I should give the students themselves the chance to try to apply these characteristics on the poem in hand. The Pulley, for example. The Pulley, this poem tackles man's divine connection to God, the relationship between human beings and God. Now, we try to explain the idea of the pulley because the pulley itself is a tool, is an instrument. It is something that is used to carry up the heavy loads. Okay, this is the literal meaning of this. Of course, this is the title. I mean, it is very important to start with the title itself. This is the title of the poem because the title usually gives a primary idea about the poem itself. Okay, now the title here is not used literally. It is used metaphorically because it represents the application of the metaphysical conceit. The whole poem is dominated by the idea of the pulley. There is a spiritual, the connection between man, human beings, and God, this divine connection is just like a pulley. God usually, or human beings are connected to God by a spiritual pulley. So the idea, so here the teacher can start first by showing the students either drawing a diagram or showing them a picture of the pulley, then starting by asking the students, what is a pulley? Why do we use pulleys? What do you think is the connection between the pulley and the idea of this poem? Especially that when we read the text of the poem, the word pulley is not mentioned in the text of the poem. So what is the connection? These questions, these types of questions can stimulate very critical thinking, and they can draw their attention and make them active participants in the lecture. Okay? It's a kind of, as part of, then we move forward to something else. As part of brainstorming and personal thinking, the teacher asks the students to mention some biographical facts of the poet that best help to a better understanding of this poem. Of course, if we come to the biographical sketch of George Herbert, we find many things about him, but the most important thing that can significantly explain or can significantly be related to our poem, the idea that he was a priest, and the idea that he devoted his poetic talent only to write religious poems, or poems that explain the connection, the spiritual connection between human beings, God and human beings, and the sins of man and the forgiveness, God's forgiveness, and so on. So the idea of selection here is not only the role of the teacher is to be selective in the poems that they select for teaching their students. But there is another role of selection made on the students themselves. When we come, for example, to the biographical sketch, we ask our students not to be selective, not to mention everything. I don't want to know where was the poet born, or when was he dead, or I don't care. Or how many books of poetry did he write? Just give me the biographical information that can best illustrate or help to understand the poem in hand. Okay, Doctor, please. Then we come to something very important. Actually, the relatedness between the form and the content. Because, of course, this is a very important opportunity for me to say that one of the problems that I found during my long experience of teaching poetry, that teaching poetry is mostly content-oriented. What does this mean? It means that most teachers of poetry neglect the importance of teaching form, and they only focus on the content while they teach poems. They only focus on the idea, the meaning, the theme, and they neglect the form, or when they refer to it, they only refer it as passers-by. Okay? It's very important. Form is very important. What I mean by form is the rhyme scheme, the genre of the poem. What kind of a poem do we have? Is it lyric? Is it epic? Why? Why do you think, I can ask the students, why do you think he uses a narrative form for this poem? What do you think that a lyrical form is can best represent the idea of the poem? Is there any connection between the form and content? What type of a rhyme scheme? If the poem is a sonnet, what kind? I may ask the students to analyze what kind of a sonnet do we have. Is it Italian? Is it English? Or it deviates from both? Why? And things related to the form, such questions that are related to the form. And here is another example of teaching Shakespeare, something from Shakespeare, according to constructivism. If the poems of Shakespeare are the subject, then perhaps teachers can select from Shakespeare the poetry that best matches the students' lives. As you know, William Shakespeare was the one who perfected the English sonnets. And he perfected it not because of the form, but simply because he was the first one who wrote sonnets not only about love or human love between a man and a woman. He wrote sonnets that talk about friendship, time, shortness of life, different ideas or different themes that are related to human's life. So in teaching the English sonnet, the Shakespearean sonnet, a good teacher can be selective. Let's select the things that can best make a dialogue to the students' minds, that can converse with the students' minds, that appeal to them and appeal to their age and add more to their life experiences. Let's make an example. For example, if I want to teach To Be or Not to Be, as you know, To Be or Not to Be is an extract, is a very important soliloquy from his play Hamlet. And as you know, that all the plays by William Shakespeare were written in blank verse, so they were not prose poems. So they can be considered poetry as well, rather than plays. So how can I apply the constructivist approach when I teach, for example, To Be or Not to Be? This ask the students, number one, ask students to describe a situation in their life where they felt alone and at conflict. The same feeling that Hamlet felt when he was reciting these lines. Have each student talk about that feeling. Let them talk about. Here I can apply the speaking skill when I ask them to talk about how did they feel when they felt alone, or when they had a specific conflict, internal conflict or psychological conflict. Work with the students to mention other poems that match a shared experience if possible. I can ask the students, can you mention some other poems that give or talk about the same experience, maybe not even in English or in Arabic or in Kurdish or in Turkmenish literature. This is just to make them enter, to make them more collaborative, to attract, to draw their attention and to draw their interest in the work or in the text we are studying. Then we work with the students to analyze the form of the poem. So notice now, it's all about working with. What does it mean to work with the students? To ask them. I'm not going to give them the information. I will ask them to give me the information, to explain it, to think critically okay, and answer my question. Then describe for them what Hamlet was feeling just before the speech begins, and ask the students how they feel Hamlet might react. What do you think? What is his reaction? Do you accept this reaction or not? So now you see that we have analyzed both the content or ask questions that draw the students' attention, both related to the form and the content. Review the students' remarks and challenge them to write short passages. Now I'm moving forward to another skill, which is the writing skill. Ask them to write something in brief. Whatever comes to their mind, even if it is short paragraph, and ask them to read it. How do they react? I'm asking for their critical response as readers, and what I mean by the critical response, their critical response to the form and to the content. Next slide, please, Doctor. Before the conclusion, I would like to refer to something I have mentioned while making my presentation. According to the constructivism, or to the constructive approach of teaching literature or teaching poetry, some scholars say we may ask the students to write poems. And let me tell you that I have myself practiced asking the students to write their poetry. But how? Of course, we are not poets, and students are not required to become poets. And I'm well aware that we are not teaching poetry to produce poets, but to improve their linguistic skills and pedagogical and mental skills, and as within the framework of the educational skills. But I practiced asking the students writing poems when I taught them four-year students, especially four-year students, when I taught them imagism poetry and haiku poetry. And as you know, for those who are majored in literature, they are, I'm sure all of you are well aware that imagism poetry or imagism poems are very short poems inspired by haiku, which is Japanese form of poetry. And imagism poem is a very short poem, maybe in 2 or 3 lines, and it is based on representing a specific image, so that the image in a haiku or in an imagism poem is just like a portrait, a whole visual image that the reader imagines, can easily imagine. And I showed them some haiku and imagism poems, which I personally wrote, though I do not claim I am a poet. I'm just majored in poetry and in literature. And I found that many students were very much interested in trying to experiment writing their own poems. And I received many imagism poems written by my students. And it was actually a very interesting experience. So to end with, constructivism is a very important approach in teaching, particularly to ESL students whose classroom goals are focused on integrating all the components of the communicative competence. We mean grammatical, discourse, functional, sociolinguistic, and strategic. Moreover, with the constructivist approach, foreign language teaching strategies are designed to engage the learners in the authentic, pragmatic, and functional use of language for meaningful purposes, to get students involved in real-life interpersonal conversations, Teaching is done by integrating the 4 language skills: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Mastery of these skills is essential if the learners are to become accurate and fluent speakers of the second language. Poems that tackle themes related to hatred, war, racism, man's position in the universe, man's relation to God, can be a good selection for teachers because they enable students to draw a connection between them and their own life experiences, hence increases their interest and understanding. The last slide is also, it's not a conclusion, but it's a kind of didactic. It's a didactic poem which significantly talks about I selected some lines from this didactic poem which talk about the method of constructivism. Let me read them if you don't mind. Cooperative learning is not new, but too much talk, and talk will dull the brain. Lectures alone make it hard to construe. On this matter, educators agree. Interactive learning we guarantee. Students' involvement we must guarantee. Direct teaching can no longer remain. No seating charts for students we agree. To replace worn-out techniques with the new constructivism so students construe and learn from teaching that rouses the brain. Thank you very much. And I think now we can give some times for discussions. Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aloha. I do appreciate your efforts to teach us and to show us the right way to teach our students poetry. In fact, I like teaching poetry, and I have one particular experience with teaching poetry, so I like to have another experience. I usually teach drama, novels, criticism, but it is going to be such a pleasure for me and an honor for me, of course, to teach poetry. Thank you very much, dear Dr. Arwa. I wonder whether we have certain questions from the attendances. Let me check the chat box. Here we have, maybe it is comment from one of our guests. I think one of the forms of constructivism regarding teaching literature is the reader's response approach. Dr. Arwa, what do you think about reader response approach?
Yeah, Doctor, here constructivism is maybe here this refers to the learning, because constructivism is a method of teaching and learning. Actually, it's all about response. So we can say that here, instead of using the word reader, we can say it's the student's response. It's all about response. So this is the idea that in constructivism method, the lecture becomes the student-centered one, a student-centered one, because it is mostly based on the response of the students. How do students respond to the questions that arouse? How do the students respond to the experience that the poem tackles? How do they respond to the life sketch of the poet so that they can select specific points to be mentioned in the lecture rather than reading a whole, maybe boring life sketch? So it's all about response.
Yeah, it is all about response. Of course, we have to keep in mind that when we talk about response, it is not a matter of I like it or I hate it. When we don't say I hate this poem, I like this poem, and that's it. we have
Definitely.
to we have to explain why. This is why it's very important, I think. In fact, totally speaking, I guess that when we talk about teaching literature, we have to keep in mind three important questions: what, how, why. What and how and why. What to teach, how to teach, why to teach. These are very important questions when we deal with teaching literature, teaching essay, teaching anything that we want to teach, whether it is literature or not literature, non-literary text. If we أستاذ عباس إذا الحضور ما عندهم سؤال نقدر ننهي المحاضرة بعد إذنك.
Just if you allow me, there is a question about the model, which one to be followed in teaching literature concerning the models I have mentioned about the text, how to approach the text, if it is a personal growth model, cultural model, all of them are going to be mixed together in our teaching literature, because definitely we cannot neglect the cultural model or even the personal growth model, because all of them are our aims in besides the language model, that is going to be the interactive discourse in our lectures. So in the academic education process in general, in teaching literature, we should be careful with the text, because the text is enriched with so many information. I can use what I want to teach and what I want to improve in the students' mind, skills, abilities.
Yeah, you are right. You are right, Doctor. In fact, I want to remind you and the attendances concerning the macro and micro element. Of course, we can never ignore. Yeah, we can never ignore everything related to the text, its language, its content. Even sometimes the life of the author are very important, especially if, for example, we want to teach Dr. Faustus. We can find certain link between Marlowe himself and Dr. Faustus. If we want to teach a novel, D.H. Lawrence, Sons and Lovers, of course, we can get the benefit we need from the life, from the biography of the author himself. Zainab, and of course for you, Dr. Arwa. Thank you, أستاذ عباس. شكرا أتعبناك، وشكرا جزيلا لتحملك، شكرا جزيلا للحضور الكرام.
جدا شكرا للحضور
جزيلا للجميع، وبارك الله بكم.
شكرا جزيلا دكتورة اوفى، وإن شاء الله نلتقي في محاضرات ودورات قريبة في إبداع أكثر.
Thank you very much.
السادة المستمعين، نزل رابط الحضور بالشات لمعتاد الحضور. المستمر بعد ساعة إن شاء الله.